There we are. Now we're live. 1 second.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And good morning. As we were having a little bit of technical difficulties getting this show started and underway, but we get it kicked off. Good morning. It's Thursday, and we are here with the Mac and Jack Show. I am Jamie Pags filling in for Mac, and I am with Hall of Fame boxing writer and sports enthusiast Jack Hirsch. Good morning, Jack. How are you?
Hey, good morning. While we were having technical difficulty, I was checking up on the baseball standings. I mean, I'm not a fanatic who likes to check on it every single day because there's not much movement. But every like 3 days or so, I take a little bit of a glance, and certain things hit in like a reality, like the Dodgers, a 19 and a half game lead, in their division. And your Bryce Harper hits a walk-off double for the Phillies. He's back. The man is back. I guess he's just going to DH the rest of the year in all probability, but just the idea, the emotional lift he gives the team, not to mention the big bat.
Well, not only, I mean, he had 2 home runs yesterday. Today is the day he's eligible to come off of the injured reserve. So he should be able to, I kind of believe that he's going to stay in Lehigh again for one more day and then come back to the Phillies, I think, on Friday. I think that they are much further ahead than what they expected him to be. Like I said, he had 2 home runs yesterday. He hit 2 doubles yesterday. One happened to be the game-winning, hit. So I am interested to see what type of jolt he's able to give this team, give moving forward here, and see if he's able to make something happen in terms of, getting the Phillies ready to go and moving forward for a Red October, which I'm excited about. And obviously the Padres are falling down tremendously. I mean, now there's a game and a half lead for the Phillies over the Padres in the wild card standing, and the Padres are only a game and a half out of the wild cards, below the Padres. So even with all the trades that the Padres made, they are not really doing well since all of that happened.
No, some teams we have these great hopes for, and we keep waiting for a breakthrough. And sometimes it eventually happens and there's a big breakthrough, but sometimes it doesn't. You take the LA Angels. I mean, every year it seems they're a massive disappointment. And this year they get off to a great start. And I tell myself, I should have known, because I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs, but I thought they'd have a winning record. And I'm kicking myself for not picking them to make the playoffs. And then they fell completely apart. They're 20 games under 500. And imagine stars like Trout and Ohtani. It's got to be killing them to be with a team like that. But you just better hope your Sixers have a good year. Otherwise, Joe Embiid is asking out. I was a little disappointed, Pax. It's something I heard. And I hate to say it because the model citizen to me in the NBA, the one player who I respect more than anyone else, or at least did, was Giannis. I just respected him so much because he said before the Milwaukee Bucks won the championship, he signed the extension with Milwaukee. He said, this is my town, this is my city, this is where I want to be. He didn't look for the bigger market. And he was rewarded with an NBA title. Now he's saying he wouldn't mind finishing his career as a Chicago Bull because of the great legacy the Bulls have. What a great history the Bulls have. You mean you don't want to be a career Milwaukee Buck? This is your city. The Bucks have a legacy too, thanks to you. What are you talking about? They won an NBA championship under you. Then they won another one long ago with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Oscar Robertson, 2 of the greatest of all time. And you're part of that legacy. You're creating your own legacy, and you wouldn't mind latching onto the coattails of Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen because the Bulls have this history. I'll tell you, I was a little hurt by it. And I'm not a Buck fan, but I was a little hurt by it. because I looked at Giannis as being kind of an NBA role model. And just for him to say that, to infer that, I don't like it. If it was part of a contract negotiation and he had a year to go, I can maybe understand he wants to put a little fear in the Bucks to get his money. But even then, the Bucks are going to give him the max. They'll give him as much as they can. The idea Giannis said that, Giannis, please.
Yeah, and of all teams, like he didn't like he said the Bulls. Listen, the Bulls were only really relevant and have only been relevant with Michael Jordan. Since before then and after them, whoever heard of the Bulls? The Bulls have not been. They're not this team that transcends over time in the NBA. No, they had a moment in time when Jordan was there, and that was it. After that, they haven't gone back. Even with the guys that they have had, they had Derrick Rose and all that. They wound up getting knocked out as a number 2 seed by the number 7 seed Philadelphia Sixers.
Well, that's not even it. Had Giannis grown up in Chicago as a kid, I can understand that. I can respect that because when D Wade left Miami and never should have left Miami, I blame Pat Riley for all his games. They didn't sign D Wade to the deal that he deserved, being an iconic Milwaukee Buck player. And of course, Pat Riley's full of it after saying, oh, he wished he'd signed him. He wished he'd done this. He's full of it at the time. Pat Riley knew exactly what he was doing, okay? So D Wade had no choice. Really, I shouldn't say no choice. He was getting underpaid compared to what he could have made elsewhere. And the idea they took forever to sign D Wade, they hurt his pride in that sense. So he left to go to his hometown, the city grew up, Chicago, to be with the Bulls a little while. Then he came back to Miami. Now he's like a part owner, like the Utah Jazz or whatever. But Giannis had no link. I don't mean to make him the story here because that kind of slipped under the radar. It just bothered me. If the NBA has any big story, it's kind of starting to become old news, but people are still talking about it. Kevin Durant deciding he's going to stay with the Nets. And I think this was a situation with Kevin Durant where he finally decided, I better cut my losses because this thing is going to drag out. I'm going to come to camp as a Net, and people are going to be asking me, reporters all the time, about where do I want to be traded, and they're going to think, am I going to hold out? And he just wants to play basketball, collect his money. And I think he's talked to Kyrie. Reportedly, they're still very good friends, even though there were reports he was a little disillusioned with Kyrie basketball-wise. But I think the two of them spoke, and my impression is they're going to give it all they have this year and then see what happens next year. Now Kevin Durant is saying he never really meant to give an ultimatum to the Nets, that he really didn't want the GM, Sean Marks, and the head coach, Steve Nash, fired. He just wanted to shake things up, get the Net organization a little annoyed at him that they would trade him, that there would be movement. But the Net organization said, the heck with it. You have 4 years to go, so no deal is being made. And I expect Durant and Irving to be all in this year. Irving for selfish reasons, not because he's a guy of great character. This is his walk year. So if he has a big, big year, maybe even the Nets sign him to a long-term extension. Imagine if the Nets win the championship or go to the finals and Irving has a great year, plays hard all year, has a good attitude. They could change their view on whether to give him the money or not. But would I trust Irving? Even if he could get it together for 1 year, I think it'll be the same old Kyrie next year. Just my opinion.
And now throw in another ego of Ben Simmons into that mix. I think that this is a time bomb waiting to explode. That's what's happening here. That this fuse is a long one because we're not even into basketball season yet. So, but I expect that by Christmas, the Nets are going to either implode or explode, just because of everything that's going on. And I would expect that the Brooklyn Nets are going to be the talk of the NBA this year, not for good reasons, that they are going to be just a hot, hot mess across the board. And although Durant and Kyrie could possibly play very well together, I think that Simmons is going to dictate a lot of the drama that happens with this team. And ultimately, it's going to be, uh, I think it's going to be hysterical to watch, because I am not a Nets fan at all. I know that you are a Nets fan, so that you are going to be a lot more in tune with what's happening. But I think it's going to be a hot mess. And ultimately, it's going to wind up causing such a rift that next year, everybody's going to be somewhere different.
Is Simmons even going to play this year? I mean, what's his attitude going to be? I'm going to tell you the best thing that could happen to Ben Simmons, okay? To have him show up every day, play hard, is if one, his teammates and the coaching staff never get on him. They're always supportive no matter what. And the fans don't get on him no matter what. Because then Ben Simmons, I think, okay, no one's getting on me. I'm not under pressure. Durant and Irving are running the show. I could just do my thing. You tell me, from his years as a Sixer, does Ben Simmons have an ego? Does he have to be the star? Does he have to be the man? Was it tension with Joel Embiid? Because he was never going to replace Joel Embiid as being the man, in Philly.
Yes, I feel that had a lot to do with it. And this has been contentious throughout. I mean, you think about the one All-Star game where Ben Simmons came up and smacked Joel Embiid on the rear end. And it was a playful thing, but the look that the two gave each other, even after the fact, was like it was being playful, but it wasn't looked at as playful. And when Ben Simmons was doing everything that he was doing after the playoffs, and Joel Embiid's like, "What's going on? This guy is like super soft. Who do we even want him here?" And then he shows up because he knows he's not going to get his check, so he figures he shows up, and all of a sudden that will include him for getting his check. And then he winds up, claiming mental illness. So many different things that happen there. It's the drama. I've said it before. I will continue to say it. Ben Simmons likes what basketball can do for him, but not necessarily care that he plays the game of basketball.
Well,
And I
if he
feel
has
that
an ego, but he has to be the main guy, he's going to have major problems with the Nets. He's never going to be the main guy on any team with Kevin Durant. Okay, Durant's not a leader, but he's always going to be considered the best player on the Nets. And with Kyrie Irving's personality, Kyrie Irving is not going to take a backseat to Ben Simmons. It takes a personality and a great player like LeBron James to keep Kyrie Irving in his place. Okay, because Kyrie Irving can't go off and be a leader on any team with LeBron James. He's got to follow LeBron James. I think Kyrie Irving accepted that. He didn't like it with the Cavaliers, but he knew it was a way of life, with him. But it's going to be interesting. But there's a such thing, Pax, too. Ben Simmons is a young man. Sometimes these young men do mature. They do turn over a new leaf, and something could happen in their life. I'm going to give you an example. Take Karl Anthony Towns. Karl Anthony Towns has had a really good year last year. He seemed to get it together in his career. He had the tragic death of his mother due to COVID. And he was focused on basketball after that, going through all the personal turmoil, and our hearts go out to Karl Anthony Towns, what he endured. But he showed great character, Karl Anthony Towns, last year with the Timberwolves. And I think that's going to continue. Not that he didn't have character before that, he did, but his career wasn't quite living up to expectations. But last year, it took a big leap towards that, to him being one of the best players in the NBA.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to speak much on Carl Anthony Towns because I didn't watch a lot of his games, so it doesn't really matter to me in that regards. But I do think that Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons will be a very contentious relationship. And I think that Ben Simmons is going to do exactly what Ben Simmons does, and he's going to slink away, and he's going to cause the drama that just is seems to follow around the Nets. That's what happens. It looks like the Nets are just, a magnet for drama, and that Kyrie Irving and the Ben Simmons relationship is going to be a very rocky one in general. And because of that, because Kyrie Irving's not going to be afraid to call Ben Simmons out. And if he calls Ben Simmons out, Ben Simmons is going to do what Ben Simmons does, and he's going to cry. Well, I can't deal with this. I'm too soft, blah, blah, blah.
Well,
That's the problem.
Pax, what I would like to see, if Kyrie Irving calls Ben Simmons out, the coaching staff says in front of the team, look, you're not the coach. We talk to other players, on things like that. If they see he's putting Ben Simmons down, I'd like to see the coaching staff say, worry about your own game, Kyrie. He's fine. Embarrass him in front of the team. Embarrass him in front of the team, Kyrie. And if Kevin Durant comes to Kyrie's aid, you tell him you got to worry about your own game here, Kevin, as well. What are they going to do, Pat?
I think that you are delusional if you think that that's going to happen. I think that's a delusional
it's not going to happen.
Process.
I don't think it's going to happen. I'm saying what should happen. I remember, even though it's a crossover sport, I remember in baseball years ago when Barry Bonds was a star player for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He was their best player, big star. He was putting down a much lesser player, someone low on the totem pole. Manager Jim Leland got in Bonds' face and told him, who the heck do you think you are talking to him that way? He lit into Bonds, his star player, and then walked away in a huff and left Bonds speechless, and Bonds had no recourse. I loved it.
Right, but that was also Jim Leland, who was, arguably, if not, I think he may even be a Hall of Fame manager. Where, Bonds was a Hall of Famer, but you have to make sure to keep the peace on your team. Think about that in the opposite way. You go to the Padres when you saw Machado and Tatis last year having a fight and arguing with each other. Machado was trying a little bit of a leader, and Tatis didn't want to hear it, and the manager didn't do anything about it. Well, I still feel like that carries over for this year, and that's why they're 20 games back right now against the Dodgers. That even though they're
Bob Melvin as their manager, very successful with the Oakland A's. They might still make the playoffs. I mean, they might get it together, and who knows? But you know who I was thinking of, sticking with basketball. Michael Jordan on The Last Dance was talking about the episode in which he had a scuffle with Steve Kerr at practice. They were bumping one another, and he hauled off and he punched Steve Kerr. Now, keep in mind, this is Michael Jordan. Phil Jackson, according to Michael Jordan, he said it, Phil kicked me out of practice. I love it because they had that relationship. Michael Jordan didn't put himself above authority. Now, I know he kept needling Jerry Krause, the GM. That's a little different. But when push came to shove, he knew that's the coach. The coach kicked him out of practice. He didn't say, I'm not playing the next game as long as Phil's the coach. I don't want to know from him. He respected what Phil did. And then Phil Jackson saw him later, and Jordan said, I know, I was wrong. You know what I did. And can you imagine a scuffle taking place with Durant, Irving, and a much lesser guy, a bench guy? And can you imagine Steve Nash kicking one of them out of practice? Get out of here. Go to the locker room. That would never happen.
Right. Well, and I understand that. Like it's yeah, like I said, he's not strong enough. He's not strong enough, or you know, even revered enough by his own players
Kathy
to be
must
able to
be
do that.
Kathy Moritz.
Yeah.
She must be a Sixer fan, familiar with them, because anyone who says no team's going to have peace with Ben Simmons, I mean, kind
Yes.
of is talking like they know his history. All I know about Ben Simmons, Pax, that man can play D. He can play D. I
Yeah.
want him out there playing defense for the Nets. If he does his job defensively, don't worry. No one's going to bother him. Kyrie's not going to bother him. Kyrie just wants the ball. He wants to score. As long as Ben Simmons is allowing him to score. And if Kyrie sees Ben Simmons playing defense, Kyrie's going to be Ben Simmons' buddy. He's going to be like Ben Simmons a lot. He's going to encourage him, tell him, keep playing that great defense, Ben. We're going to win games because of you. And then Kyrie's going to be checking the stat sheet, how many points he has.
All right. Well, that's the one thing that we can say rest assured about Ben is that he will pass it. He doesn't want to shoot. He'll pass the ball. So ultimately, that's
Now,
going to work
Durant
well.
and Irving, that ain't bad. He can pass the
Exactly.
ball in that situation.
Exactly. So keeping with drama and getting away from basketball, because we still got 2 months left to go before basketball, but keeping with the drama, I was talking with a podcast in Miami yesterday. And obviously, I am not uh, a Miami Dolphins fan, and the drama that happened around that I know about, but has never really put any thought into it. And after talking with them and then starting to investigate the timeline of what happened with the whole Brady thing and Miami getting their owner Ross being suspended for a few games and getting fined and losing a first and a third round draft pick and ultimately like all the stuff that's going on, I started to think about this, and obviously talking to Dolphins fans, I wanted to get the opinion on the Dolphins and then started to think about some of the situations that have occurred between the Dolphins and the Patriots. Now, obviously, they're interdivision rivals. They have, there's no love loss between Kraft and Ross. In general, that's not something like they're not chummy. They're not the best of friends. It's always a very
Well, how do you know? They haven't had a rivalry. New England's always dominated the last couple of
That's not
decades.
true. That's absolutely not true at all. Actually, when you look at the records between the two of them, even over the last 10, 15 years, the Dolphins have been a thorn in the Patriots side. So if you go over the last 18 years where they went to 6 Super Bowls, the Dolphins actually probably have the best record against the Patriots. Minus like a team that doesn't play them as much. But ultimately the Dolphins have been able to really beat the Patriots in a lot of different things. But I started to play with the timelines of both the Patriots and the Dolphins going on. And I think I'm starting to uncover a pattern that shows that, we get to hear the stories. And when we hear the stories themselves, they're innocuous. Oh, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And it's not really much of anything going on. It's just reported. But when you start to put the timelines together, they actually start to create a very interesting pattern. Uh, so it came out in the report that in August of 2019, that Bruce Beal, that was where he started to do the tampering with Tom Brady, and that was in 2019, obviously in August. So that was before the last season of Tom Brady. That he was still with the Patriots during that year. It was so much so that Beal wound up on the board of TB12. So that's he is part of Tom Brady's brand as the vice chairman of the Dolphins. This is happening in August of 2019. In October of 2019, excuse me, that's when Kraft gets caught in the sting of this massage parlor down in
Wait,
Florida, down in Miami.
you're saying Kraft, I can't follow this, Pax. I mean, I'm following you, but I can't connect the dots. Kraft getting caught in the massage parlor. How on earth is that football related?
So I
Indirectly football related.
stings aren't something that happens frequently. You know what I mean? So, when you have a raid of a place, and I'm not a police officer, so I can't speak 100% intelligently about this, but the just how by convenience during the raid of this massage parlor, you have such a high profile person like Robert Kraft in there doing, getting a massage, you know, at this massage parlor while it's getting stung by the police for prostitution. Are you going to tell me that's a coincidence? I don't think so. I don't think it's a coincidence at all. And because it happened in Miami, it makes even more sense that it could be possibly, again, this is all my hearsay. I'm just putting out the timeline for you that, could it have been Ross that said, hey, this is where he's at. Let's, why don't we go bust it? Because ultimately nothing came of that. He didn't get really fined or anything. Kraft just got embarrassed. It was an embarrassment to him as that all happened. So you have that occurred, and it was the Miami Fan Talk Show that I was on as we were reporting this. So I appreciate them stopping on. Go a little bit later, obviously, in May of 2020 is when, Brady goes to the Bucks. And I started to think about that a little bit that, all right, you have Beal on the board of TB12. He probably cannot just leave New England to go right to Miami because that might be considered, the collusion might be considered too quick. So he goes to Tampa Bay and goes and wins the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay, obviously. They sign him again for that second year, which is if Tom Brady didn't want that second year, he could have probably gone to Miami then, but instead gets that second year and gets the rights for the third year. He signs a 2-year deal after that. So, and that's why he goes to retire after 2022. Anyways, January of 2022 happens. They fire Brian Flores, and everything that's going on with that. And then Belichick does the text message to Brian Flores congratulating him for the Giants job. That doesn't occur. Obviously it goes to another guy. So the Giants actually get named in the lawsuit by Flores. But in that lawsuit by Flores, not only does he accuse Ross of telling him he has to lose, but he also mentions that Ross asked him to help get a very high-profile quarterback that was unnamed. Belichick is also named in the suit, but not as a witness, not as somebody that is getting sued against, because it was the text message that brought this all out. It was a 58-page lawsuit in the process of this. So
it should be noted that Brian Flores was a longtime assistant with New England, so he knew Tom Brady well. Whether there was any relationship with him and Tom Brady, who knows? I mean, but we'll assume they were friendly, okay? That they were friendly because it was, Brian Flores was on the coaching staff for Tom Brady, so they had to know one another pretty well. So there would have been a comfort level in all probability had Tom Brady played for Brian Flores. That would be the assumption because of, there being a history there. But I'm looking at Brady's motive here. What is the difference, Tampa Bay or Miami? Tampa Bay was just as ready to win as the Miami Dolphins were ready to win, unless his motive was this. He wanted to stay in the AFC East because that's the division that New England resides in. What better way to get back at your old team for kind of, I hate to use the word forcing you out, but they kind of forced Brady's hand a little bit. They didn't give him, New England didn't get him the players, the receivers, that he wanted. He kept taking cuts in pay. And somehow he didn't have the voice for New England that someone of his stature should have had. Like, look at Aaron Rodgers with the Packers. When Aaron talks, the whole organization listens. No one's going to say, Aaron, you just worry about quarterbacking and leave it at that, because he has too much power, Aaron Rodgers. When Tom Brady would talk, they would tell him, Tom, just worry about quarterbacking and all. We got this under
I
control.
disagree with that wholeheartedly.
Well,
Wholeheartedly.
Belichick
Belichick wanted to move on from Tom Brady with Garoppolo. And
exactly.
said as much. And Tom Brady was the one whose voice got him there, and they wound up
At
trading
that time
Garoppolo
with
in the
the
process.
owner, but it had gotten to the point. It had finally gotten to the point where Robert Kraft had to make a decision. Again, the first time around, Brady was younger. He was definitely in his prime. There was no doubt about it then. And Kraft sided with Brady over Belichick. If Belichick was going to quit, Kraft was going to get another coach. But it had gotten to the point where Kraft's thinking was, look, Belichick's a fixture here. Tom's towards the end of his career. It kind of breaks my heart. I'd like Tom to retire as a Patriot, but I'm going to stick with the coach, because the most owners do it that way. They won't overrule a coach for quarterback. And the feeling was Brady was coming off a so-so year with the Patriots. So the feeling was, how much longer is he really going to quarterback? No one foresaw him going to another team and winning a Super Bowl the way he did. And they did get off to a slow start, the Buccaneers. They were 7-5. But getting back to it, the Buccaneers, we went to, was 7-9 the year before. Jameis Winston, the master of the pick six, had been their quarterback. So and I saw the Buccaneer, and at the end of the season, I actually went to a Buccaneer game that Winston played. He started the game with a pick six, ended the game for the Buccaneers with a pick six. So now they're 7-9, and Bruce Arians had it. He had to move on from Jameis Winston. They get Tom Brady. There's excitement in Tampa Bay. Now it's his team. And with a good quarterback, they were a playoff caliber team. That was the feeling. With a good quarterback, and with Brady, maybe the Super Bowl was in play. And as it turned out, it was. As opposed to Miami wasn't any better off. But now the talk is, and let me know if I'm getting off the topic a little too much, then reel me in. Brady reportedly wanted to go to the Raiders. Now the talk is, and the Raiders were sticking with Derek Carr. We don't know whether that's
so. I have a whole theory about that too. I'll talk about that after I get finished with my timeline.
Okay, yeah.
So here you go. It's like, all right. So January is when this happens with Belichick texting Flores, obviously about the Giants job. February 1st is when they actually named the report of, that's when Flores actually files the report against the NFL, the Giants, and the Dolphins, specifically naming the three of them in the report. Belichick is named in the report, but only as a witness because he was the one that did the texting. Now, I got to imagine that, first off, Belichick is more on point than most coaches are at all. And him making, I texted the wrong Brian. Get out of. He knew exactly what was going on.
Wait. Is that really ludicrous? Brian Flores, Brian DeBall, you have contact messages, Pags. You on occasion, and we all have, contacted the wrong person, like sent a wrong person a text, made a wrong call to someone. It's happened to you a number of times where you call someone else, picks up the phone, and you go, oh, I'm sorry, I meant to call so-and-so. It's rare, but it does happen.
Yeah, not very often. In fact, I personally have never done it. I'm very particular.
You might not have a lot of
friends. I've had it done to me where somebody meant to call some other person or text somebody else, and they've texted me. So it has occurred with me being a player, but I've not been one that does that. I'm almost positive. I am almost positive. You can't convince me otherwise that Belichick didn't mean to text Brian Flores. And they just went under the guise of, oh, it was a mistake. There was no mistake. Belichick knows exactly what he was doing, and that this was retribution. This was retribution for what happened in October of 2019. I think that it's the revenge is a dish best served cold. 3 years after the fact, the timeline's long enough where nobody thinks, oh, well, this was done by Kraft to kind of start the wheels in motion, because that's what happened. This lawsuit put in motion the tampering. That's when the NFL started to investigate the tampering of Brady by Miami. The lawsuit is what spawned all this. And they investigated for 6 months. So what happens? All right. So now this starts to take place in February, where the NFL starts to do their investigation on Miami and Brady in the process. April comes around, and this very awkward trade occurs between the Dolphins and the Patriots, and they trade a first-round pick, Devontae Parker, and a fifth round for a Patriots third-round pick. Now, yesterday, the Miami Fan Talk Show said, well, that was probably a peace offering. And I looked at it as, well, maybe it's considered restitution. That's that the peace offering, restitution, whatever you feeling it, because this trade, of any trade specifically, is ridiculous. I mean, you're going to trade a first round pick along with a fifth rounder for a third round pick. Interestingly enough, how it comes out that the third round pick is what they wind up.
Well, was the first round involved? I thought it was for third round. It was
a third round pick, but Devontae Parker was a first round pick.
Was the first round, yeah.
Yeah.
No, but listen. Let me tell you something, Pax, about first round picks. They're like a new car, a brand new car that's worth so much. As soon as you drive it out of the dealership, Pax, that first day, it's devalued. You could bring it back the next day. You could only drive the darn car for 3 miles and then bring it back, and the price goes down. It's devalued. So I don't want to hear about Devontae Parker. He wasn't first round value when he was traded. He was about third round value.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So you could say the same thing, about different quarterbacks and all this stuff. He wound up he was a first round pick when he was chosen. Him and a fifth rounder. I mean, it's only been 2 years. So it's not like he's had a tremendous amount of time to prove his worth as a first round pick. So literally 2 years' time, and he winds up getting traded to the Patriots.
It was a peace offering. Who was giving who the peace offering?
The Dolphins, Patriots, a peace offering. And that's why they gave a first-round pick with Devontae Parker and a fifth rounder for a third-round pick in return. The third-round pick ultimately is the one, they wind up losing that as part of the deal on the investigation in August. But that being said, the only ever trade, there's been 2 other trades. One was an inconsequential trade between the Dolphins that involved a guy who was a 7th-round pick who got picked up by the Patriots for a 6th-round pick. The only ever trade that ever has happened between the Dolphins and the Patriots happened in '93 with Irving Fryer. Where they got a 2nd and a 3rd-round pick for Irving Fryer.
In the same division. They're
right.
Rivals.
So right, these are not normal trade fellows. They don't normally trade with each other. That's kind of what I'm getting at. That you don't see this. This is a contentious relationship between these 2 owners. This is what I was breaking. This is what I'm talking about. This is high-level drama that has been brushed aside by Roger Goodell as in general, because nobody's ever put the 2 timelines together. Nobody's ever thought about it this way. That here it is, that I think that Kraft's getting busted in that massage parlor was something that was actually organized by Ross in 2019 to just put an embarrassment, to just embarrass Kraft. Like I said, it's too much of a coincidence, and I don't believe coincidences happen, that Kraft was at that massage when the police county decided that they wanted to do a sting.
Wait. How would Steve Ross know Robert Kraft's business? How would he know he's going to a massage parlor unless he was going with him? I mean, how would
Uh,
he possibly know? I mean,
Come on now. Come on now. You don't
Kraft
think
up,
these guys are billionaires? You don't think that they can find this
you,
out? You don't think that they
you
could
know,
figure that out? That here it
you're
is,
thinking,
that Kraft is just happens to be in town going to this massage parlor right at the moment that they're going to do a sting. You're going to tell me that that's a real thing? That's organized. Somebody orchestrated that whole thing completely. So you can't tell me otherwise. And that's why Belichick texted Flores also. That was also orchestrated. That came from Kraft saying, "Oh, Belichick, why don't you text Flores instead of text the thing? We could
all
just
he
say it
did,
was a mistake."
all he did was congratulate Brian Flores. But didn't, if Belichick knew Flores didn't get the job, that Brian DeBall got the giant job, he wouldn't deliberately text Brian Flores. I mean,
Unless you're trying to make something happen, because like I said, that spawned the whole series of events. That text message specifically spawned the lawsuit, which spawned Miami getting investigated for tampering with Tom Brady. All of that occurred in that succession of a timeline. You had the text message before the announcement of the hiring, even the text
let me ask
message.
you this.
Say again.
Let me ask you this. Why is Steve Ross all of a sudden such a villain? Isn't it Steve Ross more than any other owner who hired minority candidates, coaching
I'm not.
positions, GM
It has
positions?
nothing to do with any of that. You are blowing right past what is happening here. This is our days of our lives of billionaires that own NFL football teams. That I got to imagine. Not only is this occurring between Kraft, like this is kind of like a gamesmanship between Kraft and Ross, and on the $1 billion level that we don't get to see very often. And unless you put these two timelines together, this is what Roger Goodell gets paid hundreds of millions of dollars for,
Let me tell
and
you
all
about
this
Roger.
stuff.
No. What Roger Goodell has been concerned about these last couple of years, and he's becoming more and more concerned about it, is not doing what's right, but doing what makes the NFL look good. He doesn't want the NFL to look bad, in other words. He's on defense the whole time. All these penalties he hands out, they don't they don't fit the so-called crime. Okay. I mean, even at the Deshaun Watson situation, whether you believe he deserves an 11-game suspension, no suspension, a 2-year suspension, and never let him play again. The point is, the NFL's actions in that and in the Miami Patriot thing have been based on how it's going to make the NFL look. Because since the Ray Rice incident, in which Ray Rice got suspended for 2 games, all the heck has broken loose. I'm tongue-tied even with this, because the 2-game suspension set everything off in motion. And Goodell wants to come across being like the NFL is very tough. They don't put up with anything. Like even the Tom Brady thing when he was suspended for 4 games for, taking some air off the ball or putting more air in the football or whatever the heck he allegedly did. That wasn't worth a 4-game suspension. That's utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. That should have been maybe a fine at most. Even 1 game would have been a little too much for that, because quarterbacks generally did that.
Well, and like I said, and that's a whole different story. That was getting back at Kraft.
But just
because
saying Steve Ross was looking into ways to nail Robert Kraft. That's basically
yes, I'm saying that's what occurred. That's what occurred with the massage parlor, and Kraft got his retribution from that whole situation in 2019. Just recently with the text message from Belichick to Flores.
I
Because like I
don't
said,
because I'm going to tell you something. If it ever came out and Bill Belichick ever said that Robert Kraft put him up to sending a text message to Brian Flores. Do you know the trouble that Robert Kraft could get into? He might
That
be
would never occur.
team.
That will absolutely, absolutely never, ever occur. That'll never occur. Then you're never going to. We are looking. Like I said, it's only because I put these two timelines together that this is actually even a story at all. Because ultimately, all together, these are non-stories. They're all non-stories. Oh, Kraft. Kraft gets made a joke of because he happened to be at the massage parlor at the time it had a sting. That's just a major coincidence. It just so happens to be a major coincidence
So what we
that
have
that
basically,
that Belichick texts the wrong Brian, that spawns a lawsuit that starts an investigation by the NFL into Miami and winds up getting Ross suspended for a year and losing 2 draft picks. I mean, that's what's occurred.
is
That's what
Ross
all.
suspended for the year? I thought he could come back in the middle of October. So, but he
Yes,
was
yeah, it wound up being 6 games and such like
right,
that.
right,
So
but Miami was hit hardest. I think they had a fine of something like 5 million, if I'm not mistaken, of thereabouts, and they lost 2 high draft picks.
a
So
first
that
a
was the
first this year and a third next year.
right, right, and that's meaningful. Don't get me wrong, that's
Right.
meaningful. But they can't. But you could also survive something like that. You just yeah. But
So
it's meaningful. It's meaningful discipline for the NFL and for Steve Ross just to put everything behind him. And also the NFL found the thing about tanking games. Stephen Ross made a joke about it, and no one in their right mind would think that Stephen Ross would seriously tell his team to lose, because if they did that, then now it becomes criminal, like fixing the outcome of a game. But and I'm going to be honest about it. If you have a franchise quarterback all there, and you can win one extra, I don't want to say meaningless game, but let's face it, it means nothing. People were mad at the Jets a couple of years ago because they looked like they were in the lead to get Trevor Lawrence. And then they go to LA and they upset the Rams, who were, a year before the Rams won the Super Bowl, but nevertheless, the Rams were Super Bowl contender. And they shocked people with their character, winning that game. And all of a sudden, they fell behind the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. But if I'm an owner, I'm like dumbfounded. I'm not mad, but I'm not happy about winning the game. I'm like figuring I'm proud of my guys, how hard they played.
again, that was just Gase screwing up a franchise. Gase screwed up. He was a terrible coach, and of course, screwed up the franchise there too. That's what happened. He screwed up that franchise.
But the point is, I think the owner, I wouldn't be surprised. The Johnsons wanted the Jets to lose so they could get Trevor Lawrence at that point.
Of course they did. Of course they did. And Gase threw it to them. And Gase, that was the problem. Gase was just bad in general across the board.
Well, I'm not here to knock Adam Gase. He was fired. His time is past with the Jets. But what I'm saying in general, owners, if you could get a franchise player, if you could get the next Michael Jordan, for example, and you just have to lose games at the end of the season where your team's going nowhere, you won't admit it. You can't say it, but you rather lose those games because it's better for you in the future.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's what the whole situation was with Flores and this tanking of game. Everybody in Miami, that was the slogan. We're tanking for Tua. They were tanking for Tua.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was citywide, NFL wide. That's what was going on. They were tanking for Tua. They were doing whatever they could to make sure that they could get Tua Vailoga, Vailoga, whatever you say.
It didn't matter. They picked 5th overall in the draft, and they got Tua at number 5, one spot ahead of the Chargers, taking Justin Herbert. But Burrow was the guy picked 1st overall. But the talk at the time was Tua was in the lead, but the problem was the feeling was that he was injury prone. That was the concern. So his stock dropped a little, based on that.
So if you're going to go based off of that in terms of, hey, did the owner say that he was going to, the problem is that they weren't very good of a team. And that whole tanking for Tua, obviously, that they're winning. The Dolphins started winning games after playing the Eagles because the Eagles went down there and lost. That was what really because the Dolphins were on like a 6-game losing streak until they run into Philadelphia, and then they beat. Then they won 3
Wait,
more
wait, wait,
games
wait,
after
wait.
that.
But I remember that Dolphins season. They started the season. They looked like they were the worst team in football. Opening game, they got blown out by the Patriots. I forgot the exact score, but let's say it was something like 52-7. I don't know the exact score, but it was that wide. It was a complete blowout. And then they play the Patriots the last game of the season. And for the Patriots, what they had on the line was home field advantage and a bye throughout the playoffs. But they lose to the Dolphins, and they lost their bye. They had to play an extra week, and that basically took the heart out of the Patriots, and it ended their season unofficially because they lost the bye game. But the idea the Dolphins were improving late in the year under Brian Flores.
Yes, but that was also during the time where they were still tanking for Tua. And that's what every Dolphins fan, everybody who was in Miami knew they were tanking for Tua at that time.
So
And
where's this going now, Pat?
so like I said, all this is because ultimately the last part of this is that the NFL starts to fine Miami and all this other stuff for tampering and so on and so forth with Brady. Brady gets exonerated and all of that. He doesn't get any, you know, purpose in that. He's like, oh yeah, well, it had nothing to do with me. It was all part of Miami. Miami's the one that was really in charge of that. But what I was showing and what I was sharing, that this is behind the curtain drama of what happens between billionaires in the NFL. These two
Let me
guys are
ask you
completely
this.
in competition.
You're saying Brady gets exonerated. When this was going on, wasn't he on was he on the contract, anyone?
Yes. Yeah,
On
that's
the
why he
contract with
retired.
Buccaneers.
He retired, and then, but he signed that 2-year extension because Tampa Bay had the extension, and that's where Arians said, "Well, if you're going to trade, I want 4 first-round picks, because it's bad business to trade, Tom Brady for nothing."
But
And
why would
ultimately, and that's why Tom Brady got angry with Bruce Arians and said, "I don't want this guy to be the coach anymore. If this guy's
oh
going to
no.
screw with my life that much, I don't want him to be the coach anymore."
Wait a
Because that's
second.
ultimately what happened.
Tom Brady reportedly, when he left the Patriots, he was a free agent.
Right.
Okay, he was a free agent, so he was entitled to go wherever the heck he wanted to go. Okay, his first preference was the Bay Area. The 49ers were thought to be in the lead, but the 49ers had Jimmy Garoppolo there. Okay, and so they were sticking with Jimmy Garoppolo. Then now it's coming out he maybe wanted to go to the Raiders, and Gruden didn't want to part with Derek Carr. So he looked towards Florida.
So,
Okay.
all right, now you want to talk about that for a quick second while you just brought that up, because it was Dana White that said that. So Dana White,
Dana White, I don't know how credible Dana White is.
Dana White. So here's the credibility of his story, and this is the only credibility of this story. Dana White happens to be in a room with Tom Brady and Gronk, and they're drinking. Because I know that this is probably exactly what happened. I wasn't there. Again, we were allowed to be a fly on the wall by Dana White. That's what this story really entails. So you got Dana White, Tom Brady, and Gronk are all sitting around drinking, having a good time, and they're talking about where they should go. Dana White, who is a Raiders fan, then let that be known, he's a Raiders fan,
Okay.
is talking about him going to the Raiders. And say, why don't you guys go to the Raiders? Blah blah blah. Now they're drinking, they're carrying on, and Gronk says, "Yeah, let's do it. Why don't we go to Las Vegas? We could have a great time over there." Dana White, who's got Gruden on speed dial because one, he's a Raiders fan. Two, I mean, this guy is high profile stuff, so he's going to have high profile people. They get Gruden involved, and now Gruden is in on the drinking game. They're like sitting there, oh yeah, blah 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 blah. There was no way that Tom Brady and Gronk could have gone there because the Raiders didn't have the cap space, and there was no manipulation of cap to be able to bring the two of them in. That's really what it came down to when you start to look at the actuals of things. But they were talking about it, and now we got him on the phone. We got these guys right here. He's brokering a deal for his favorite team to get the best quarterback that ever played the game and his number one tight end who he's ever played with to his favorite team. And of course, Gruden, when all was said and done, said, all right, guys, this is enough fun. Yeah, we're done. So I don't think there was ever really a deal that could possibly have come from that, but it was a lot of fun to talk about. And as they're drinking together and having their thing, so that's what really occurred there, and that's what Dana White's talking about. He's talking about a drinking story where he was drinking with Tom Brady and Gronk, and then John Gruden got involved.
Should have signed Gronk for the UFC, giving them easy opponents, build them up. Makes a couple of matches in the New England area.
Yeah, I'm sure that all of that could have occurred. But that's, like I said, that's what the story was now that it's coming out 2 years after the fact that there was this whole deal brokered. It was drinking. They were all drinking together. That's what that's what I believe. You can't tell me otherwise. There's no way that you could swing that story to say, oh, it was a real deal. There was contracts going across. The Raiders never had the cap space to be able to sign both of those players. And it would never have been able to happen. That's why they stayed with Carr, because there wasn't the ability to be able to sign both Brady and Gronk.
Carr makes a lot of money, so there had to be a way maybe to move on from Carr and slot Brady in with X amount.
I'm sure that if somebody wanted to spend a good enough time to do it, that they could have done it, and they could have moved Brady and Gronk to Las Vegas. But truth of the matter is that it was all done over a night of drinking, and the fun ended when Gruden said, "All right, guys, I got to get off the phone now. It was good talking to y'all." You know what I mean? That's what it was, where Gruden pulled out. I mean, and Gruden can't really say much now because Gruden's not really in the league anymore. He's going to get vilified the moment he comes out of hiding, because of all the things that happened with Gruden. But when all is said and done, I feel that that was just beer talk. That was just bar talk that we got a glimpse of because Dana wanted to be the fly on the wall by telling his side of the story. And ultimately, that's where this all still comes with, because this kind of falls into that story as well, as that we have pulled back the veil a little bit of what happens between billionaires in the NFL, because I can't imagine that it's just between Kraft and Ross. I have to imagine that there are other things that happen in total between owners.
Well, now
as gamesmanship, which could be considered gamesmanship.
I mean, a lot of times rumors float. Now the talk is the owner of the Falcons, Arthur Blank. He's furious because people are thinking the Falcons are going to tank this year. Certain personnel moves were maybe set up for them not to be as successful because it's a great quarterback class next year. And they have Marcus Mariota, who they got as their starting quarterback this year. And Mariota, he's not really an NFL caliber starting quarterback who you want in your team. I know he was the number 2 overall pick in the draft, and he showed potential at times when he was with Tennessee, but he never really put it together. When a quarterback has had a job and he's given a starting job and he can't hold on to it, and he forces a team to look elsewhere, then you give him another stopover, chances are he's not going to make the most of it, and he's not going to be any better than he was the first time around. We just have to look at the Carolina Panthers. They invested a lot to get Sam Darnold, a number 2, a number 4, number 6 pick. And the job was Darnold's a year ago. He couldn't hold on to the job. In other words, he forced the Panthers to draft the quarterback, Matt Corral, who ironically is out for the season, suffering an injury. All probabilities out for the season, I should say, for the foot injury. And of course, Baker Mayfield. So when we heard all the talk, well, Baker and Darnold are competing for the starting job. I'm thinking, really, guys, you know what Darnold could do based on last year. So he comes to camp with a great attitude and this and that. Are you going to tell Baker Mayfield, sorry, Baker, Darnold beat you out? You're going to, of course, Baker's going to get the starting job. And Darnold can only reclaim it if Baker plays poorly and they feel a switch is in order during the year, and then Darnold plays well coming out of the bullpen.
Yeah, and I like I said, I don't think about that. But let's go back to Arthur Blank there for a minute. If you want to know what my personal opinion about that, another hot take that I'll throw right this very second, Atlanta is the next team to leave the city. That the Falcons will wind up playing somewhere else within the next 5 years. That's why Arthur Blank is upset about the fact that there are rumors that his team is going to tank, because he doesn't want to get looked as somebody who tanks games, because he wants to move the team. Atlanta is more of a soccer team, a soccer city, than it is a football city. That stadium gets sold out for soccer games, but they have a hard time. They have a hard time getting anybody in there for football. That stadium is usually at 50 to 60% for football games, but soccer games it's at 101% capacity. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Arthur Dent move this team to somewhere else, to another city, and I think that happens within the next 5 years.
Yeah, but what type of product have the Falcons put on the field? They haven't put a very good one on the field for a while.
Well, it's been a couple of years, but let's say in 2019 they were in the playoffs. They lost to the playoffs to the Eagles, or 2018, and in 2019 they still had. So and they went to the Super Bowl and lost that Super Bowl.
You're right. I'm thinking since the Super Bowl, but you're right. I mean, okay, they put an average product on the field for the fans. And I didn't realize they only fill up 50 to 60% of the seats.
Correct.
That's justification for, a team moving, perhaps.
I agree.
But then again, I got to think during the pandemic, the stadiums were empty. Teams were putting no one in the stands, yet they survived quite well. They didn't seem to miss
television cures a lot of ails.
So why move? So why move out of Atlanta, even if you're not selling out? Unless he wants
more money. That's why you would do it, because he owns that. He owns the Atlanta soccer team as well. So he owns that building. Yeah, and they are able to fill that building up for soccer and whatever else he wants to do. He could wind up, if he wound up moving that team and going somewhere else, and so another team was to come to Atlanta, now he would be able to get rent from that team and make the money for wherever the Falcons are at that time. So I wouldn't be surprised.
That would be a major conflict of interest if he did that. Major conflict, collecting money.
Well, I mean, I got to imagine that he's smarter than that, and that would be a corporation that he would be an owner in, but not the chairman, and ultimately that he would still be able to make the money, so that the conflict of interest isn't.
Sell his interest in the building according to the NFL, and he could own his soccer team there, but he'd have to sell, any interest in the building.
I don't know. I don't know that that's the case. Because again, we don't know the rules that these guys play by. That's part of the purpose of me even talking about the Patriots and the Dolphins ownership. That's the only reason, because we have, like I said, we got an inside look from stories that are just thrown out there. And as fans, we don't ever connect the dots. This was a connection of the dots that shows a pattern between Ross and Kraft.
Leave Robert Kraft alone out of this. I mean, he's had a dignified career. And you want to keep mentioning, his thing with the Dolphins, hanky-panky, and all that. But I just want to focus on the Falcons a second. Where would they move to? Where would a viable place be? I mean, there are places out there I know you could dig something up. But on most of the cities taken, what about a college football town that doesn't have an NFL team?
Well, the one place that I think more than anything else is Birmingham.
I just thought of Birmingham myself.
Birmingham, Alabama, because of the way that they just did with the USFL. That the Stallions, the team that did win the championship, actually had good attendance. It was the other games that didn't have any attendance. So they were actually getting good attendance for the Stallions there. They just weren't doing it for anybody. And ultimately, I think that if there was ever a spot that would be able to handle it, because, I mean, being there, you could get some of the people from Arkansas, you can get some of the people from Mississippi, that you would be able to start to get some of that fan base that only deal with college.
A lot of times a move by an owner is based on where he wants to live. Okay? And maybe Arthur Blank, he just doesn't want to live
in
Atlanta. Maybe he wants to live, somewhere in Florida, but Florida's taken up Miami,
Miami, Jacksonville, and Tampa Bay. You're not going to have a team in Orlando.
Yeah, Orlando's a little close. Why not?
I think that Orlando, although they got a stadium and for everything and stuff like that, I just don't think that's, I don't think that's a viable spot for a football team.
Well, he might think I'm going to get the same attendance I do in Atlanta, and I get to live in Florida that way. Or maybe, I'm just thinking out loud if I'm an owner, because even if you saw that documentary, The Captain, Jeter always wanted to be some type of part owner, have responsibility with the team. And his wife was saying we couldn't believe it that he had a job like that in Florida he got. It was either going to be Miami or Tampa Bay. And then she said something to the effect, forgive me if I mentioned the wrong city, we weren't going to move to Kansas City or Milwaukee. Because that means his family would have had to live there full time. And no knock on those cities, but you can understand why someone would rather be in a warm weather climate, Miami or Tampa Bay, full time year round. So and these owners have all this money at their disposal. They usually have to live in the city, a good part of the year. I mean, can you own the Buffalo Bills and live in Florida year round and just show up for some of the games? I mean, it's hard. It's hard to work.
Listen, if you're a billionaire, you can live wherever you want to and get to wherever you want to. There's no doubt in my mind that the owner of the Bills could live in Florida and fly up for every game. He could fly to every game. Doesn't matter. I mean, to think about that in a very realistic sense.
Around. Listen, to be an owner who has impact, you got to be around. You got to show up at practices. You got to kind of know the players. You can't be that corporate where they have no idea who you are. Like Jim Jeffcoat was saying when his son played for the then Washington Redskins, the owner Daniel Snyder and the GM, they would come with their beach chairs and put it down and be sitting on the sidelines, watching the practice. I mean, that's kind of comical in a way when you think of beach chairs. But the point is, owners being around, it could have a positive effect. It could have a negative effect. It kind of it all depends. I mean, I'm thinking of a buddy of mine who owns a lot of eyeglass businesses. And I was meeting him one day at one of his eyeglass places. And I was astonished at how hard everyone was working. I mean, I got there before him and I'm hanging out, looking around. And then when he got there, I kind of thought to myself, they probably thought they're used to him. But I asked him, how often you come to this particular store? He goes, about once a year. And then I'm thinking, yeah, they knew the boss was coming. So everyone is on top of their game.
Of course.
But it's the type of thing. But I think as an owner, you want to be involved. You want to be around it. It's more than dollars and cents, a sports team. They can invest in all these other businesses. I mean, I think it gives you more notoriety owning a sports team than any business that you could be in. Robert Kraft, for example, I'm assuming now Kraft cheese is his.
Yes, I made that same assumption.
Okay.
That Kraft is a brand. Kraft is a brand that's, they own. I think they own Nabisco now. They own Nabisco, so it's like he's a big conglomerate of food. It's not just cheese.
Anyone who's a sports fan is going to associate him with New England. How many people are going to hear his name Kraft and think Kraft cheese anyway?
I think everybody. I think absolutely everybody thinks that.
Kraft 100%. Cheese?
Kraft cheese. But that when I think of Robert Kraft, I feel like that he is that his family is the majority owner of Kraft Foods.
I think New England Patriots when I hear the name Robert Kraft. I don't think of any of his foods.
Well, like I said, that's correct because he's not the CEO of Kraft Foods.
He's keeping on the Dolphins in another way. I mean, how do you feel about Tyreek Hill burning one of your boys, Darius Slay, in practice, and the Dolphins seem to be celebrating over it?
And let's go do a commercial break, and we'll come back at this one because now we're getting into stuff that I want to talk about too. So why don't we go to take a quick commercial break? We're already a few minutes behind that, and so we'll be a quicker one. I'm letting you know so that you can get back here fast because we've been pretty spirited in our talk today. So we'll have a little bit of a quicker break, and we'll be back here in just a few minutes to talk about everything that happened at the Eagles-Dolphins practice yesterday. We'll be right after these messages.
The Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.
Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help?
Mm-mm.
I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good. Makes me feel nice.
See you around.
That's the way it should be. I like to see
Hey, kid.
the whole world is smiling with me. Coca-Cola as life. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
smile.
You know, one of the best things about being an ex-big leaguer is getting freebies to the game. Call the front office, bingo. And once these fans recognize me, I probably won't even have to pay for my light beer from Miller. Down it, I love them. These fans know I drink light because it's less filling and it tastes great. Good seats, huh?
You're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on.
Oh, I must be in the front row.
Come on.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer and less.
Good seats, hey, buddy. He missed the tag. He missed the tag.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, No thanks. Not my thing.
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, isn't he?
And we're back. Yes, because I forgot to take off our. There we go. Now we're back to the spirited Mac and Jack show, as we've been talking about a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Mostly the Miami Dolphins, Robert Kraft, a little bit of the Nets. Today has been a drama-filled day.
We've basically agreed on a lot of points. The times we've disagreed, it's kind of been gentle. But I'll admit, it did catch my attention, that scrimmage that went on with the Dolphins and the Eagles, because I never knew the Dolphins and the Eagles to be rivals in any way, shape, or form. I'm completely unaware of any history between the two teams, but it seemed like the Dolphins had it in for the Eagles. That's the impression I now have, and I don't know why.
Well, yeah, just because that Hill beats Slay, and they make a big deal about it, but nobody showed Devontae Smith burning their guy. Yeah, like there's the one video with Hill and Slay, but not the video of Devonta Smith just burning right past their other defensive back, and that whole play happening. So they could say whatever they want. There was a lot of reports that came out of that practice. Some of them for the Dolphins, some of them for the Eagles. It's all drama. This was all drama. Obviously, the Dolphins were making a really big deal because Slay got burned on that one play. And truth of the matter is, I understand, because Hill is much faster, and that's what it was. It was just a go route, and he wound up getting burnt on that go route. He just wasn't able to keep up with them, and that's how he got burnt. So, yes, when you got the fastest player in the league and you got him on man-to-man coverage up on the line and he does a go route, I think Slay is going to lose that race. That's what we learned. Slay is not as fast as Hunt. That's it. Right?
Yeah.
That's all there was.
Right. Tyreek Hill,
I'm sorry.
Tyreek Hill came from the Kansas City Chiefs. So we still think of him as a Chief, but of course, he's going to forge his own legacy as a Dolphin going forward. But a couple of days ago, one of the iconic NFL players passed away at age 87, former Chief quarterback Lenny Dawson. He didn't play his whole career with the Chiefs. The first few years was elsewhere. But with the Chiefs is where he made his name. He was the MVP of Super Bowl IV, in which the Chiefs beat the Vikings 23-7. And he was really one of the high-profile quarterbacks with the AFL, the American Football League, that then merged with the NFL. And then, of course, hit the high point, with winning the Super Bowl. And afterwards, and when you talk about Tyreek Hill being a great receiver for the Chiefs, before there was Tyreek Hill, there was Otis Taylor, who was a great receiver with the Chiefs. Him and Dawson would hook up a lot. And Hank Stram, the coach of the Chiefs, had called Lenny Dawson maybe the most accurate passer he ever saw. He didn't have a cannon for an arm, but he was accurate, really accurate. He would manage the game with the Chiefs, and he an outstanding player, a Hall of Fame as a player, And then afterwards, he became a Hall of Famer as a broadcaster. Later generations may have remembered him for the work he did with that weekly show on HBO. But during his time as a player, I mean, Lenny Dawson was a heck of a player, always well-spoken, always a gentleman. And he was not only the MVP of Super Bowl IV, he was the losing quarterback of Super Bowl I when the Chiefs played the Packers in the first ever Super Bowl there. But he was going against the mighty Green Bay team. And the Chiefs are big underdogs and lost that 35-10. But 3 years later, they got over the top and they showed they belonged. So the great Lenny Dawson passed away at age 87. And by all accounts, he had a really good life. And he gave so much to the NFL. So he's one of the guys the NFL could look back on who gave a lot of glory to the league.
I would agree with that. Obviously, I know a little bit about the history of him. Like I said, it's and his passing is something that's going to be felt. So the heart, like again, our condolences go to the family. But he definitely did have a good career, and it'll be interesting to see how the NFL celebrates that here coming forward over the next couple of weeks, probably on week 1. Where they'll probably bring something out for Len Dawson, specifically in the Kansas City game, I would assume.
When you talk about the great quarterbacks of all time, Lenny Dawson's name never comes up. But he was he was the equivalent of a player who's going to have a long career, and he's very good for his career. Very, very good. And very good wins championships. Sometimes you need to be great to elevate average players. But Lenny Dawson, you could put him on any team. Like even today, you could put him on any team. And if you put him on the top of the line team, they won't miss a beat. And you put him on, an average team, he was always a steadying influence. Very accurate, very smart. And during the time he was playing in the AFL/AFC, Joe Willie Namath was the man. But you looked right behind Namath and took a slight peek. There was Lenny Dawson. He wasn't charismatic like Broadway Joe. He didn't have the cannon arm. He didn't make spectacular touchdown throws, but he didn't make spectacular interception throws either. Okay, he was steady. He was smart. He was a field general. In fact, I saw him bump my Jets out of the playoffs the year after they won the Super Bowl. I was at Shea Stadium when the Jets were trying to defend their title. During that season, I remember the Chiefs coming into New York. The Jets had won 6 in a row against weak teams, and the Chiefs trounced my Jets 34-16. And I remember the Sports Illustrated cover said, Chiefs paint New York red. That was how their uniform was. Then they play in the playoffs. Playoffs are a whole different proposition. And I remember Shea Stadium was like a wind tunnel. The wind was blowing every time Dawson and Namath would throw the ball in the air. The wind would get hold of it. The ball would die out. It was a day for running game. But the Jets were down 6-3 midway through the fourth quarter, and there was a penalty, and the Jets had the ball on the Chiefs 1 yard line, down 6-3. And I'm thinking, we might actually beat the powerful Chiefs and go back to the Super Bowl. The Chiefs stuffed the Jets on 3 running plays in a row. Jets kick a field goal at 6-up. Lenny Dawson gets the ball back 7 minutes or so. 2 passes, 80 yards for TD. Just like that, zip, zip. He got it done, in a way that, the greatest passes possibly would. Chiefs win that game, beat the Jets. They beat the Raiders the next game, then beat the Chiefs. Beat the Vikings, 23-7 in the Super Bowl. Great career, with Lenny Dawson.
Right, and that was, it was Hank Schramm was the coach of that team, right?
Hank Schramm was the coach, yeah. Lenny Dawson always also figured in a rule change with the NFL, which is funny. He ran a bootleg play against the Raiders. The Raiders had no timeouts left. If the Chiefs would get a first down, if they win the game because the Raiders can't stop the clock. So he runs a bootleg for first down and he hits the deck the way he's supposed to. So game's over. Ben Davidson trailing the play, excuse me, for the Raiders. Got a little horse here. Does a forward roll on Len Dawson's back. Forward roll. So they call a penalty. Otis Taylor, the chief receiver, starts beating on Davidson for doing that to his quarterback. So they throw a flag on Otis Taylor. They call offsetting penalties. The Chiefs have to run the play again. They don't get a first down by running it again. And what happens? The Raiders get the ball back. They tie the game in a field goal. There was no overtime then. And that play prevented the Chiefs from going to the playoffs.
Got you. Huh. That's interesting how history kind of goes.
They
and
changed the rules, the NFL, because they saw the unfairness of what happened. Why couldn't they see the unfairness potential of it beforehand?
Hey, the rules were the rules then. I mean, the Raiders like to play, and a lot of rules changed. I mean, that's where you can't move a fumble forward. You can't kick the ball to move it forward. That was a Raiders thing. The tuck rule, you could kind of say, was part of the Raiders situation. So anytime that there's a rule change that is deals with, it has to deal with the Raiders a little bit.
Yeah, there's got to be, rule changes all around. I mean, we'll talk about this another time, maybe for the debate show. Let's save it for good idea. Should they change the check swing rule? I mean, that's the rule that I hate. The guys, he's not swinging, and it's such a fine line, but that's for another time.
Yeah, and I think they're actually pretty good with that rule. But we like I said, we could talk about that on Saturday for the debate shows. So, as I see Chris is the guy who actually gives me most of my news up to date, and I think it's something worthwhile to talk about Harper. I know that it's only AAA that Harper has been doing his stuff in, where he winds up doing a walk-off. He has 2 home runs, one being in his first at bat yesterday or 2 days ago in Lehigh Valley in AAA. But I think he's ready to come back. His 60-day IR ends today, or IL ends today, and he could be back as early as tomorrow if he wanted to.
I mean, listen, a 13-year, you sign a guy for 13 years the way the Eagles would sign Harper. Normally it's ludicrous, but I look at the total sum money you're paying a guy. It's not the years. If you can pay him a little less, if you can get him to sign for 13 years, but pay him for 10, basically what he would get, I wasn't against it. $330 million for 13 years. If they were going to give him $33 million a year, I wouldn't have considered it outrageous. He was a free agent. I would have considered it okay. It's a steep price, but it's reasonable. He's still young for 10 years to get him. It's like he's giving you the last 3 years in a sense free. Or you could look at it another way. You're paying him $30 million a year for 10 years. He's worth that. The last 3 years, he might be all burned out, but that's $10 million a year. You can maybe live with that.
Yes, I kind of agree. I thought that this was definitely a user or a team-friendly contract. And I feel that he was part of that, in the process, because he wants to win a championship. It's not always all about him. And he said it during the press conference. $25 million is a lot of money a year. I'm never going to go hungry.
I'm the Pags, spare me. I mean, these guys, it's not about the money, it's winning a championship. It's virtually always about the money. If you wanted to win a championship, stay with the Washington Nationals. They won the World Series the year he left. They were right there, as one of the favorites to win the World Series, and they did it.
Yeah, but if they had signed him, they may not have been able to sign Scherzer.
His situation wasn't the same as Mike Trout's is now. Mike Trout, I can understand if he gets sick of losing. The darn Angels are dysfunctional. They even make the right moves and it turns out wrong. I could understand Mike Trout getting sick of losing, but the Nationals were a good team. He
Yeah,
left
actually, but and what brought them over
they
the
won
top?
the series.
What brought them over the
Without him.
top was the fact that they got Scherzer. Scherzer was the signing that they got. They wouldn't have been able to sign Scherzer had they signed Harper. So you could arguably say that they may not have won the championship because they were still playing with Stroudsburg in
I
terms
think
of his.
Scherzer was on the team with Harper the year before. I believe.
Or maybe like Stroudsburg, they were going to give money to Stroudsburg.
Oh,
They
no,
weren't
they
going to
had
be able to
it.
keep both of them. That was the thing. They weren't going to be able to keep everybody.
But if Bryce Harper had a good attitude with the Nationals, okay? And what I mean by good attitude, really said, look, I'd like to stay here. I would like to work it out. Bryce Harper is a star. What turned the Nationals off is he seemed to have a bit of a prima donna attitude with him. He was never listen, he's been embraced by Philadelphia thus far. I'm correct with that, right?
Yes.
He never was really embraced in Washington as being a hero athlete the way he should have. Washington badly could have used a face of, sports in Washington, D.C., and Harper would have been perfect for it. They never quite took to him and him to them. It was like he was renting, not buying. That was the equivalent when he was with Washington. Now he bought in Philadelphia.
Well, isn't it? Yeah, but I feel like that's the same with everybody out of Washington, that they are renters, not buyers. And it just so happens that they wind up having a team put together that you could say that team overachieved all year long to win the World Series. And that's what got them there. They had a fairly easy playoffs getting to the World Series that year, and they beat who did they play against? Was it the Rays?
Well,
not the Rays.
No. Well, when the Nationals won the World Series, they beat the Astros in 7 games. They went up 2-0, then they went down 3-2, and then they won the last 2. But that's not the. I mean, the Nationals were considered World Series contenders. That's the part going into the year. They weren't like a dark horse. They'd had a good team for a number of years, and they just couldn't quite take the next step until they finally did it for that one particular year. But what I'm saying, in the case of Harper, like any other player, it's not about the money, it's winning. Pags, I want to see one guy step forward and saying it is about the money. But in Harper's case, because he didn't get the mega deal, and believe me, $330 million is a mega deal, but his agent is Scott Boras.
Right.
Scott Boras was looking for a lot more than $330 million. Okay, that type of deal. He didn't quite get what he wanted, Scott Boras. The Yankees didn't want no part of the bidding because they knew what Scott Boras was about. They weren't about to keep driving the price up to something really astronomical. On reflection, maybe the Yankees should have, on reflection, or came in at the last moment, but maybe by that time, Harper would have signed with the Phillies anyway. I don't know. But we do know Harper was interested in being a New York Yankee. That was his childhood team. It definitely would have gotten his attention, and he definitely would have seriously thought about signing with the Yankees. Unlike Ohtani, who apparently had no interest in coming to the Yankees. But, I don't want to hear with Harper just winning this and that. It's the Philly offer was the best money offer out there for him at the end. Unless he was going to take a shorter amount of years, maybe could have gotten more per year for a short amount of years and then, continued again. But Harper, to his credit, and I'm going to compliment him here, didn't ask for any opt-outs, decided, look, I'm a Philly the rest of my career. Case closed. So kudos to Bryce Harper for showing his devotion to the Phillies. Once he decided he was signing with the Phillies, he was all in by all accounts. Okay?
Right. And he forced them to also be all in. So that was the other thing that he did. There's a no trade clause in the process of this, and he didn't. There was no opt outs because they even mentioned that. I remember Scott Boras mentioning that. He goes, "I was the one that created these options, these player options. That's my signature." And
Yeah.
and and Bryce Harper said, "I didn't want it. I didn't want it." But that's again, it was Bryce Harper that spawned the contract to Mike Trout because he mentioned Mike Trout. He didn't mention him by name, but they mentioned this player that was playing on the West Coast that is going to be a free agent in a couple of years. And of course, the Angels took exception to that, and then immediately went and offered Trout, this contract that was so ridiculous that he had to take it. You know,
No, it wasn't ridiculous. It was what he was worth as the best play in the game. But what Artie Moreno, the Angels, did, he was very smart. He didn't wait for Trout to quite get close to free agency. I think it was like 3 years away. That's when you take care of it. Unlike the Yankees, who totally bumbled the Judge thing. They kept looking, well, Aaron gets injured. They didn't look, what's his value going forward? Forget the past. I don't want to hear, well, you did this and that, so now we're offering you this and that. And treat him like he's a free agent. And what's he going to be worth to the team and the franchise? Yankees totally bundled the whole thing, letting it get this far. And now to keep him, they're going to have to pay a lot more money. Had they just, gone all in on him a couple of years before he was a free agent, he would have signed at that point. You don't let a guy get that close to free agency. You don't, because it kind of backfires on you. Listen, teams got decisions to make. I mean, you're telling, the Philly ownership, you're saying Pax has a lot of money. Well, Jacob deGrom, assuming he stays healthy the rest of the year, he's going to be a free agent. But guess what? The Phillies aren't going to outbid Steve Cohen. The only way deGrom leaves is if he's really ticked off at the Mets. Doesn't like the Mets. As long as deGrom likes the Mets, likes being a Met, he's not going to the Phillies because Steve Cohen, the Met owner, is going to match anything anyone else gives him. If the Phillies say, oh, we're giving you $44 million a year, Steve Cohen's going to step forward and give that amount. The Phillies aren't going to give quite that much, but Scherzer's getting a little over $43 million a year. So so that's not going to happen. But Steve Cohen's a $14 billion man. He's probably looking, if I lose $1 billion running this team, and that's
you know what? You keep saying that, and I tell you, I don't know of any billionaire that says, "Oh, if I just lose $1 billion, it's going to be okay." He ain't going to lose any money. That's that. And so you could say whatever you want that he's going to give. Oh, he's going to match everything. He's going to go after Aaron Judge too. So are you going to spend? You're going to spend close to $250 million on two players? I doubt it. You know what I mean? Because ultimately, Judge is going to require about that much money, and then that means that he's going to put deGrom in there. He's not. The guy is not just going to throw away money as you keep saying that he's going to. So eventually, it's going to come. It's going to come down. I think the Phillies are going to make a play for deGrom. I think that they are, and I think that they're going to go heavy duty on the number to try to get him. Because ultimately, I think that it would be better for him in in red pinstripes than he would be in blue. Just because I think that he'd mean more for us here than he is over there with Scherzer. And then they get Judge, and they have Pete Alonso on that team and stuff like that. He's not going to be able to just blow money and say, okay, I'm going to pay this luxury tax, and I'm going to be so far over.
No one wants to go to Philly if they could stay in New York. And all due respect to Philly, you're in the New York market here. Why the heck do you want to go to Philadelphia? You don't want to. It's like taking a step down paths. It's like
you just talked to me. You just talked to me about the players that it has nothing to do with winning. It has to do with the money. And you're going to tell me now, why would he want to go to Philly if it's for the main reason, the dollar sign?
It's all factors equal. You're in the New York market. I mean, Philly is a wonderful place to play baseball, even though the fundamentals, and keep this in mind too, okay? You don't think these players talk. Keith Hernandez is a Met broadcaster, okay? He's a Met broadcaster. Keith Hernandez knows the Met players. You don't think he's down in the field hanging out with Jacob deGrom between starts, making loose talk and saying, look, these guys, you don't want to go to Philadelphia. These guys play lousy fundamental baseball behind you. Stick here like New York. You don't think he has Jacob deGrom's ear, Keith Hernandez?
Who cares? Again, is Keith Hernandez paying the money? No. Keith thing trying to keep himself relevant, talking about Mets games. Whatever. Like I said, he was a good player. He was a good player, and everybody's all butthurt that he's not in the Hall of Fame. He's not worthy of the Hall of Fame at all. And he could say whatever he wants to players, but he ain't playing. He ain't paying anybody. He ain't putting out the money. So it doesn't matter what he says. And that's what I'm talking about. When it comes down to it, it's going to matter on the dollar sign. It ain't going to matter how does the team play around you. How does everything do this way? I mean, truth of the matter is that when DeGrom, most of the time when DeGrom pitches against the Phillies, they lose that game. I want to say DeGrom never really seems to figure in the decision. But most of the time, when DeGrom pitches against Philadelphia, Philadelphia wins that game. And so it doesn't matter what anybody else says. If somebody's going to pay him the money, you were just saying how players are going to follow the money more than they are going to follow the ring.
Players are going to follow the money. They'll go for the contract, but there could be exceptions, okay? But it's interesting. Let's say hypothetically, a team like the Chicago Cubs wants to make a major splash, and they offer Aaron Judge an astronomical contract that's far better than any other team.
Judge $300 million 6 years. I think that's a great contract. $300 million 6 years is bigger per year for anybody. That's across it off the charts.
And they offered Judge, let's say, a couple of opt-outs too. That's $50 million a year. I think Judge goes for the contract with the Cubs. Even though he might not want to pay there, he might feel, wow, this is a losing thing. I hate leaving the Yankees. But he's not going to take the Yankees $35 million, $36 million at that point.
So let's go even a little bit further and maybe into the psyche.
Then again, wait 1 second. If the Yankees gave him a crazy 10-year deal for $350, he might figure, look, 6 years, $300 million. After 6 years, I'll play for $50 million. The rest, anything is possible.
Yeah, I mean, and so we could go even a little bit further. Maybe, just maybe, Aaron Judge wants to grow a goatee. It might be as ridiculously simple as that. Grow a little goatee, but he can't do it because he's a Yankee.
I think
with any amount of money I can get anywhere, I could go and grow whatever I want. I don't have to have anybody tell me how I should live in any fashion. Now, I don't know Aaron Judge well enough to know whether he cares about facial hair. You know what I mean? But it could be something that simple that makes that figures into a decision. When the money is all equal, do I want to stay with the Yankees or do I want to go? And you know what? I've really wanted a goatee for a long time. I'm tired of somebody telling me I can't have a beard.
No, not at all. Let me tell you something, Pags. If he wanted to do that, he could do it during this season. And are the Yankees really going to trade him? Okay, no, he's not going to. Listen, do you
think? All right, does anybody? All right, so let me ask you this question because you would know better than me. Has anybody ever grown a beard while being a Yankee?
I don't. That's a great question. I don't think that's the case. That there was this one player. They had an outfielder, Oscar Gamble, back in the 70s. He had this big head of hair. And he trimmed it, he cut it, and it was one of the things with being groomed. I mean, it started with
part of the contract. It's written in the contract. You have to shave. I mean, but Johnny Damon had this monstrous beard that he had to shave when he became a Yankee because it's in the contract.
Well, they come up, you got to understand this. They come up through the Yankee system. So they know they have to be well groomed, and as young players, they don't mind. And then if an established veteran's going to get traded, he knows what the deal is. I mean, it's laid out there for him. It's not a surprise. So if someone was going to have extra long hair, a beard, they would be rebelling because they're ticked off at the organization. It would be obvious they're starting a fight. Okay, and they would come off basically being the villains because they know, what the rules are. And let's face it, how many players really care that much? I mean, unless someone has a signature beard, and it means a lot, but they're not Yankees. And if they want to come here, they got to shave. They know what the deal is.
That same thing with Joey Gallo. Joey Gallo had the same problem, had to shave. All of his power was in his beard. You know what I mean? And I know that sounds ridiculous, and I don't believe that either. But you're talking about the reason why they don't grow beards is because they get fined by the team if they start to grow a beard. If they show facial hair below the lip line, so that means that you can't even do Fu Manchu. If you go below the lip line, you got to keep your mustache above the lip line. Then you are okay. Anything below the lip line as part of the Yankee contract, the Yankees can fine you. So who knows? Maybe he wants a goatee. Maybe he wants a little bit of stubble below his chin. He don't like shaving. Maybe it has something to do with that. All of these factors. Again, it's something ridiculous. It's something very ridiculous that we're talking about, but we don't know the psyche of these guys. I don't know what he's thinking about. And if all the money is equal, if the money is oranges, and all we're going to talk about Chicago, and I can grow whatever facial hair I want, live however I want, or I could stay with the Yankees and I got to shave. And maybe it's as stupid as that. Maybe it's as simple as, hey, I hate shaving. I hated in the fact in the military I couldn't let my goatee grow out because I was in the military, and in the military you have to shave. You're not allowed to have any facial hair below the lip line except in special circumstances. So, ultimately you had to shave every day. Because I start to grow a little bit of hair, somebody's going to yell at me and they get you in trouble. And if you're getting in trouble enough, they start taking away money because they don't make you shave. They start taking away money so that it starts to hurt you in the pocket so that they do that. Well, that's what the Yankees do. They start taking away some money so it hurts you in the pocketbook. And that's why you start to shave. But maybe he don't want to shave. They made Andrew McCutchen cut his dreads.
Oh, yeah, well, Andrew McCutchen's doing okay right now. Yeah.
So, and Don Mattingly had a mustache, but that fell in okay in the line of what the Yankees do.
Andrew McCutchen, at one point he looked like he might be on track, possibly to be even a Hall of Famer. If he could play a number of years the way he performed. He's one of these players who's kind of leveled out, he's been with several teams now, and it's he's still hanging around like as an average player, one of these players who's going to have a long career. Of all the careers, the one career that seemed destined for the Hall of Fame, and I'm not going to talk about Don Mattingly here, because Mattingly might someday maybe get there, even though I'm not optimistic. He might. If Hernandez gets in, then they're going to look more seriously at Mattingly. Was Freddie Lynn. He just seemed to be on track early on and it never quite got there. Let's say Bryce Harper flamed out all of a sudden now. He's a little short of being a Hall of Famer. Right? He comes into the Don Mattingly category. He hasn't locked up any Hall of Fame thing. Mike Trout, I think, has locked it up. If Mike Trout could never play another game, he's a Hall of Fame already. With what he,
I would agree with that. And
Harper still's got a little work to do, which he'll get done.
Yeah, and I think 3 more keeping up the pace that he has kind of cements him there too. So, but that's again, it's a matter of players that transcend throughout baseball. It's arguable that Mike Trout is one of the best players of all time. Again, it's arguable. You could say that
Yeah.
there was Babe Ruth, and all these other players could get thrown in the mix, but he's actually in the conversation of the all-time conversation. Could you say the same thing about Harper? I don't know that yet. I don't think that. I think he's just missing that cut of the best players of all time in baseball. When you go for the top 100, maybe, but in the top 50, and I look at top 50 is where you should be if you're going to be in the Hall of Fame.
I
So,
wonder sometimes in sports, I think to myself, if there could be an imaginary draft, meaning all the players in the past come back to life, what order would they pick in this year, 2022? Someone like Babe Ruth might not go that quick. The scouts might feel, an old timer like him, it's going to be a little hard to catch up. So who would actually be the first guy taken? I mean, there's certain safe bets. A Mike Trout, you can't go wrong on. Ken Griffey Jr., you can't go wrong on. Do you take, Joe DiMaggio, you're going to wonder, how's he going to fit in with the modern guys? He'll be good, but is he really going to be as great as he was? Ted Williams, not that good defensively. Stan Musial, I mean, Hank Aaron might have to wait till about number 22 to be picked. Who knows the order? Or do you go for pitching right off the bat? Let's get the stud pitchers we're going. That's how I feel. Do you go for the Rocket Roger Clemens pretty quickly over Willie Mays, for example? It'd be like a fun type thing if that ever took place, but it would be based on not knowing what a guy like Lou Gehrig would really do in the modern era. It's easy to say, oh, he'll tear it up, but logically, he's not going to put up those astronomical numbers in this era. Lou Gehrig might be the equivalent of a Freddie Freeman if he was playing today, which is darn good, and you're happy with that. But do you use an early selection on him, or do you wait till later on for the old timers? You just don't know.
So, and I know that you're mentioning all these different things, and the first thing that immediately comes to my head is, when was the last time, and it could be last year, I don't even know well enough, but when was the last time anybody hit over 333 at batting average?
Well, DJ LeMayo, I think, hit 364 for the Yankees a couple of years ago. That's why he got I thought the Yankees got him cheap at the time. 6-year deal, $15 million a year. The Yankees didn't want to give 6 years, but what I was talking about before, the total number of dollars, $90 million total, was viable for the Yankees. And we thought, I thought he was going to get like $20 million a year from some other team like the Dodgers, that the Yankees blew it with him. The Yankees were very patient. DJ wanted to come back to the Yankees, and they actually got it done. And guess what? Brian Cashman was validated in a sense. DJ LeMayo has been good for the Yankees since then, but he hasn't been nearly the same player. He hasn't even been a $15 million a year player. He's been more like a $11 to $12 million a year player. So, so as it turned out, the Yankees did smart business.
Right. Well, and what I look at, I'm just saying right now, I mean, like I said, it used to be that there would be players, it wasn't every year, but there would be players in the 80s and 90s and in the early 2000s that would flirt with possibly hitting 400. Wouldn't get there. It would start to trail off, and you'd be batting somewhere around 360, 375. But there were players up there all the time. You don't see that anymore. You very rarely see players get above 350 on the batting average. And that's why I even ask with 333, figuring that 1 out of every 3 at bats, you got to get a hit to do that.
Well, you're talking about George Brett that hit 390, Tony Gwynn, but the attitude has completely changed now. Batting average isn't as important as it used to be. It's on-base percentage. That's at least what teams look at, and that's smart on teams' behalf. Why did it take them so long? I mean, it's bizarre. You know, in the past, a player would go 0 for 2, but get 2 walks. You get up 4 times, 2 walks, and go 0 for 2 otherwise, and people would look, oh, he didn't get a hit, a bad day. We don't want him in there. I looked at the 2 walks always. What's the darn difference? The bases are empty. If you get a walk, a hit, it's the same darn thing. Okay.
Well, and I mean, listen, that's that. Now we're talking about Joey Gallo. Joey Gallo's batting 172 right now, but he's got an on base percentage of 300. So I have 3 out of every 10 at bats, he's getting on base. Although he's only hitting the ball 1.5 times every 10 at bats.
No, I was a Joey Gallo booster last year when everyone was putting him on and putting him down because everyone was saying, oh, he strikes out more than anyone. He strikes out a ridiculous amount of times. But Joey Gallo hit a lot of home runs, got on a lot with walks, over 100 walks, and played a good left field. You know, when people used to do the comparison, Mickey Mantle against Willie Mays, okay? They would debate back and forth who was better. Bill James, who did all those analytics, said during their primes, Mantle was better, and it wasn't even close. It was no contest. He was basing it on Mantle getting a ton of walks, getting and all the production Mantle put out. With that said, over a career, you'd have to take Willie Mays. I mean, he stayed healthier. You could count on him being in the lineup. But I guess the point Bill James wanted to make, Mantle was more of a force, more of an offensive force than Willie Mays was when they were at their best. But people point out, oh, Mantle strikes out all those times and Mays doesn't. But Mantle got all those walks. Who cares about strikeouts? Bases are empty. What does it matter if you fly out a strikeout? You know, it doesn't matter. Just like what does it matter whether the bases are empty, whether you get a line drive single for your batting average or you walked. Right. But it's changed. You know, Roy White, an underappreciated Yankee. I mean, by today's analytics, Mac and myself had him on the show. He would have been looked upon much higher than he eventually was. And he had a 15-year career with the Yankees because he drew a lot of walks, got on base a lot, set the table a lot. But that wasn't always as appreciated, you know, as it would be today.
Right. Well, and that's exactly it. It's just that's why on base percentage means a lot more right now in the grand scheme of things, although they said batting average. But that's why batting average doesn't matter as much anymore. You know, so like that's why you got Kyle Schwarber, who's batting 210 right now with I think he's got 36 home runs and he's still leading off because he's still got an on-base percentage of 350. You know, because he gets those walks too. Strikes out a tremendous amount. He's got three things. I mean, he's hitting the ball a little bit better right now, so he is hitting them long balls, long singles, long doubles. But ultimately, he gets a lot of walks or he gets a home run.
I'm going to tell you, a new analytic is going to come out, Pax. I know we're don't have much time left, but a new analytic. And I'm not giving an answer because I'm not sure. What would you rather have? A player like Schwarber lead off an inning, hit a home run, or a player like Schwarber not hit the home run, but walk 4 times, you know what I mean, to get to first base to start an inning, or 3-4 times. What's going to be more production for the team in the long run? What are they going to be better off with? The one lightning bolt or the few little pieces where he gets on base? It's like a dollar bill of 4 quarters, a dollar, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the biggest answer to that question is who's hitting behind him. And that's really going to be the bigger deal. It doesn't matter if you need the runs, you got to go with the Schwarber that hits the home runs. If you need the guys on base because you have guys that can hit the ball afterwards, then I want Ricky Henderson on base. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I want. I would rather have Ricky Henderson in comparison to Schwarber because Ricky didn't really have the power, but he did have the speed and he was able to get on base a lot. And that was more important. So I tell you, today was a great day. I mean, we've gone through our 2 hours pretty quickly here, and very spirited. It was a spirited conversation today. So tomorrow we get Byron Williams to come on. Jack, I'm sure will be, our Mac would sure be back as well, hopefully. So we'll get a little bit from him. And of course, Keith Engel from TGI Sports also comes in on Friday. So everybody, have a great Thursday. Thank you for watching us. We definitely had a lot of people on today. Listen us go back and forth. So thank you for having us today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.